Hello, I am the H-Town Vet, and I would like to welcome you to our channel, a place where we will discuss a variety of benefits available to veterans and their dependents. Today's topic, breaking down the VA narrative rating decision letter. It looks like someone received a favorable rating. This video is for a specific group of veterans, those who have served in the active duty military for at least 180 days and that currently suffer from one or more disabilities that they believe are connected to their military service. So what do you do if you're in this situation? This step in the VA process is pretty straightforward. You just put in a request to the VA. The VA calls this request a claim, and when putting in a claim with the VA, nothing is more important than telling them what you want. It doesn't matter how strong your evidence is, if you're not specific in what you want, the VA may not give it to you. For this video, we're going to use a hypothetical Mr. John Brown. Mr. Brown currently has a disability rating of 70% for post-traumatic stress disorder, and he wants to file for an increased rating. He takes no chances by listing everything that he wants. Number 1, a 100% permanent and total rating for post-traumatic stress disorder. Number 2, dependents educational assistance for dependents. Number 3, CHAMP VA healthcare insurance for dependents. Please don't leave the VA guessing. Tell them what you want based on the evidence that you have provided. While there are 3 VA compensation letters that are very important, we are only focusing on the VA narrative rating decision letter today. We will cover the VA notification letter and the VA award letter in upcoming videos. Here at the H-Town Vet, it is our goal to bring you veteran information that you're not getting anywhere else. Now let's get into it. As stated in the name, the decision letter is the written response you receive from the VA when they've made a decision on your claim, either yes or no, but the VA terminology is a little bit different. They either state that your claim is denied or that an increased rating has been established. The VA breaks your decision letter up into about 7 sections, or at least that's how I approach the document. Here's a brief overview of the information that's covered on the decision letter, to include who it's from, the Veterans Benefits Administration, or the VA, with the address of the local regional office that handled your claim, personal identifying information for the veteran, the introduction, decision, evidence, reasons for decision, and references. Number 1, the Veterans Benefits Administration, commonly known as the VA or the Department of Veteran Affairs. At the top of John Brown's decision letter is the agency that made the decision, the Department of Veteran Affairs, aka the Veterans Administration, aka the VA. Right below that is the regional office that handled Mr. Brown's claim. Why does the VA have so many aliases? They're following the law, right? Not according to an Office of Inspector General's report. Number 2, personal identification. Each claim is for an individual, the person who's filing the claim. There's no such thing as a group claim. The things that the VA used to identify you personally include your name, your Social Security number, which is used as your VA file number, but for older veterans who may have served in an earlier time period, their VA file number may be different from their Social Security number. If you have any organization representing you, they should be listed on your decision letter. Some of the more well-known veteran organizations that help veterans with their claim include the American Legion, Veterans of Foreign Wars, and the DAV. While I'm explaining the letter, I will highlight the sections that I'm talking about as we go through the form. Highlighted on his decision letter is information that identifies Mr. John Brown personally, such as his name, Social Security number or file number, and who's representing him. And in Mr. Brown's case, he was represented by the American Legion. This section also informs us that the decision was made by a decision review officer on November 20th, 2015. Number 3, introduction. The introduction section tells us what era or time period Mr. Brown served in. and the record reflects that John Brown served during the Gulf War era and peacetime. Mr. Brown's branch of service is also identified in this section. He served in the United States Army from 1988 to 1992. And when he submitted his original claim, he was denied. So why was he denied? According to Mr. Brown, the VA informed him that his condition had not worsened and actually may improve over time. Now let's go back to Mr. Brown's decision letter. In the introduction section that is highlighted, you can see all the information that we covered about Mr. Brown, including time periods and his branch of service. After that, we can see that he filed his notice of disagreement on August the 15th, 2014, concerning his earlier denied claim. From filing a notice of disagreement until getting a decision, it took about a year and 3 months. From what I've been told, currently the VA is not using the terms notice of disagreement. They just call it an appeal. Number 4, the decision. In this section of the decision letter, the VA is going to either approve or deny your claim. There are other outcomes, but we're going to discuss that in another video. So let's be a little nosy and find out what the decision was in John Brown's claim. Well, from his reaction, it was approved, unless he has a weird way to show his disappointment. In this case, the VA used the date that Mr. Brown filed his notice of disagreement as his effective date. The effective date is critical because it tells Mr. Brown when his VA payments actually starts. Starting at the effective date, the back pay is the amount of money that is accumulating while the veteran is waiting for their claim to be decided. If the claim is decided fast, there's very little back pay. However, some claims take longer to process than others, and the VA have had to pay out hundreds of thousands of dollars to some veterans in back pay. Now that we have defined back pay, let's talk about Mr. Brown's decision. The first part of his decision informs Mr. Brown that his dependents qualify for Dependents Educational Assistance. This is an indirect way of letting Mr. Brown know that he's permanent and total without coming out and saying it, and that the Dependent Educational Assistance was established on August the 15th, 2014, the same as Mr. Brown's effective date. This is useful information for Mr. Brown and his dependents, because if any of his dependents was going to college, Mr. Brown's dependents will receive Chapter 35 DEA benefits back to the effective date of the claim. In the second part of the decision, the VA informs Mr. Brown that his disability rating is being increased from 70% to 100%, and that this 100% rating date back to his effective date of August the 15th, 2014. Mr. Brown is also diagnosed with depression, but the VA only pays for the one that's the most severe, meaning that the VA will only compensate a veteran for one mental disorder to avoid peer meaning. If this video has been informative so far, please like, share, and subscribe. Number 5, evidence. The first piece of evidence mentioned is Mr. Brown's C&P examination, which was conducted on July 18th, 2015, almost a full year after the notice of disagreement was filed. Prior to that, Mr. Brown had submitted a supported claim statement March the 24th, 2015. Since Mr. Brown is a combat veteran, this could be a statement from himself because he's considered a reliable historian, or it could be from his co-workers, people he served in the military with, or even his family members. The evidence section continues on page 2 of the decision letter. It seems that Mr. Brown submitted another supportive claim statement in April of 2015. The last piece of evidence that the VA considered in the claim was Mr. Brown's VA medical records from 2011 through 2015. Number 6, reason for decisions. One of the main reasons Mr. Brown's claim was approved had nothing to do with him being service connected. They had more to do with him being honorably or dishonorably discharged. In fact, the VA makes this real clear in the section labeled Reasons for Decision. where in so many words they state that if the veteran has a dishonorable discharge, that their dependents will not qualify for dependent education assistance. This is why it's so important for veterans to get their discharge status upgraded to honorable or general under honorable conditions. After that, the VA finally gets around to telling Mr. Brown that his service-connected disability is permanent and total. Some of you may not be clear of what permanent and total means. Total means that Mr. Brown is paid at the 100% rate. Permanent means that his condition is not likely to improve. The rest of the information is pretty much self-explanatory and redundant, so we're moving on to the next section. But before we get into that, I want to go over the rating schedule and severity levels for PTSD. The VA proposed to make changes to the rating schedule for PTSD in 2024. Because I'm not sure this is taking place, I'm going to go on as if it didn't. If a veteran has a PTSD rating of 0%, their condition is service-connected, but it's not considered severe enough to need medication or monetary compensation because it's not affecting the veteran's ability to work. Once a veteran needs medication to control their PTSD symptoms, they're usually at a 10% rating. For those of you that are not aware, there's no 20, 40, 60, 80, or 90% ratings for post-traumatic stress disorder. At a 30% rating, veterans tend to suffer from sleep disturbance, to include nightmares and problems going to sleep. A 30% rating is also marked by anxiety attacks. At 50%, veterans start having conflict with coworkers, memory loss, and conflict with family members at home. At a 70% rating for PTSD, veterans become extremely hypervigilant, checking doors and windows on a constant basis. 70% is also marked by physical altercation with others and severe panic attacks. Now you're about to understand why it's so hard to get a 100% rating for PTSD. You would have to have continuous delusions or gross inappropriate behavior, poor hygiene, you don't pass the smell test, disorientation of place and time, meaning you could be somewhere and not know how you got there or where you're at, gross impairment of communication, total occupation and social impairment, gross impairment in communication, and gross impairment of thought processes. Now that we understand what the VA is looking for when it comes to PTSD symptoms, let's get back to Mr. Brown's case. We're still under reasons for decision, but now we're at number 2. Under number 2, the VA reiterates that your 70% is increased to 100%. Yes, they are very redundant, but we have to go over this information so nothing gets lost in the sauce. I want to focus on one statement the VA says. At the end of the second paragraph, the VA states, this is a full grant of the appeal. This is the VA way of saying, you asked me for 3 things, and I gave you those 3 things. At the end of the third paragraph, the VA quotes the examiner as saying that Mr. Brown is capable of managing his own finances. But you might ask, H-Town Vet, what if the doctor says that I can't handle my own finance? What then? Well, the first thing I would tell you to do is just chill. Because in most cases, the VA is still going to give you your monthly compensation with the increased rating. But while the VA is considering whether or not you can handle your money, most of the time they will hold your back pay. While the VA is deciding whether you can handle your money or not, you need to ask your mental health doctor or professional to write a letter on your behalf to the VA stating that you can handle your own finances. Because your doctor tends to be more familiar with you than the C&P examiner, this should be no problem, even in Mr. Brown's case. While I'm not going to go all of the symptoms for PTSD because I'm not trying to depress you doing this video, I do want to point out the 3 symptoms that were the most beneficial in helping Mr. Brown get his 100% rating, to include gross impairment in communication, occupational and social impairment in most areas, gross impairment in thought processes. It would be very hard to find a job with these type of symptoms. Earlier, we talked about the fact that Mr. Brown's condition is permanent and no future exams. The reason it is permanent because it is static in nature, unlikely to improve. Number 7, references. The VA has two main source books when deciding claims. The first is the Veterans Benefits Manual. This manual is used as a day-to-day guide helping the VA regional office decide claims. The second source document used by the VA regional offices and the appeals boards is the Federal Veterans Laws, Rules, and Regulations book. In fact, just like in Mr. Brown's decision letter at the end, the regional office referenced the laws that they based their decision on. If you're looking for more information on veteran benefits, we have over 30 videos in our library that might be useful. Thank you for joining us.